Hey neighbors, Kevin here with etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install B&W's custom fit base rail frame brackets here on our 2024 Ford F-250. These frame rail brackets are going to come with B&W's really strong powder coating. That's that gray color you see here, and just recently they've upgraded their custom brackets to also show which side they are for. So if you look at this side, we're over on the passenger. It's got a P on it, and if we go over to the driver's side, it's going to have a D right here. So there's no confusion of which bracket's going to go where. The other nice part about this, with them being custom, is they're just going to use the factory holes that are in our frame rail so that we don't have to drill through it, because that takes a ton of time and you're going to go through some drill bits. Now you will have to drill through the bed itself because we have 3 different bolts that we're going to have to pop into our base rails, which are also not included with just the bracket here. So we will need to make sure that we're getting the correct one for our vehicle. So you can use our fit guide or just reach out to figure out which one is going to be right for your vehicle. There's not really much else to say about these brackets. So if you aren't planning on doing this yourself, you don't want to really spend all the time and hassle drilling through your bed and getting these bolted on, then please use our dealer locator. You can find a shop within your zip code to get these properly installed. If you are planning on doing this yourself, stick around. We'll show you how we did it. So step 1 is going to be adding some polypropylene tape to all of our components. They're going to be touching the bed. With this being an aluminum bed and we're mixing steel components, there's a chance for galvanic corrosion. So this is going to help prevent that by creating a separation between the 2 metals. Now you'll have to do it with the base rails, the frame brackets, and some of the hardware as well. On the base rails, we're doing it along the outer edges and just missing those holes where our bolts are going to pass through. On the frame brackets, they tell you to only put it on the outer side here of that flange, but if this side's touching, this side over here is going to be touching as well. So I just went ahead and threw an extra strip on there as well, because they give you quite a bit of tape here. So feel free to use it up. On the hardware itself, what I did to make it easier, because they give you a ton of pieces here, I just lined them all up, taped right over it, cut it, and then took my razor blade to cut between them. So it'll be these spacers, these U-shaped spacers, and then these that also have a weld nut on them as well. Now I've set my tape measure up in the bed here, so that way we can get to our measurement. So it's going to be from the end of our bed. So as you can see, I've got it right here, and I've just taped it so that my tape measure doesn't pop off. We're going to come back 29 3/8. So I'm going to get it right at that with the center here, and then I'll take my tape measure again, and I'm going to check each side so we know that we're not crooked here, which it kind of looks like we might be a little bit more on that side. So pop that out. You need to come up just slightly. So we're going to get that 29 3/8 right to this outer edge here. So I'll go back and forth on our sides here to make sure that we're actually lining up right. Slightly off, about a 1/16. And just come back, double check, make sure you're still on it here. Now that we've measured that 29 3/8 from the edge of our bed, we also want to make sure that we're even on both sides here. So I'm right past 3 5/8 on both sides, just like a hair over it, so we know we're even here. We can take our hole punch and we're going to go directly into the center of these center holes and these outer 4 holes here, so that way we can have our bolts that are going to pass through into our frame brackets. So we'll get our punch. With our holes marked, we can push that base rail out of the way, and then we're going to take an 1/8 inch drill bit and we'll drill down through here. And before you do that, you'll definitely want to get under your bed, just double check, make sure nothing's too close to this area right here, especially your gas tank. For ours today, the gas tank is pushed up before the axle, so we know we're good on ours and we have no problem. We can drill right down. Next step's going to be putting our brackets up and making sure that the holes actually match up. So we'll look at the holes in the frame rail. If you center those in the, into these slots, then when you look at this flange up here, our hole that we drilled out should be centered in that as well. So, and if you look at the brackets, B&W has changed them up just a tiny bit. They've added in a D on the driver's side and a P on the passenger side, just to make it a whole lot easier for you to differentiate which one is which. All right, yeah, if you look up there, we can see our hole. It is centered in our slot, so we know we're good right there. Let's go check our passenger side. So on the passenger side, we do have a nice little hook right here that's helping hold this up. And then over on this side, this is kind of holding it up as well. If you look, we have our slots centered, and that is matching up with that hole that we drilled. The one all the way to the right with that square is going to be kind of offset. It'll be more towards the front of the vehicle. So that one will not be centered like the other ones are. So our next step is going to be enlarging our holes that we drilled already up to 9/16. Now, before I get to that, I am going to work my way up to it with some smaller drill bits. That way, we're not sitting here forever trying to grind through the bed. So we'll get started here. Now that we've enlarged our holes, I'm going to come back with a full round file and just kind of touch it up, make sure there's no little burrs that are going to have us hang up on. And then we will also use a paint marker. We're going to cover up that exposed metal. So for the center one at the cab side, we're going to have to enlarge this hole up to 7/8 because it's going to have a tube spacer go through it. So we'll do that right now, and then we can file it and paint it. Once we have the 7/8 hole drilled through our bed, we're going to switch back. And I've also, just to use this as my guide, I've drilled down a little bit just to start that. So that way I know I'm straight down, nice and centered. And now we'll switch back to our 9/16 bit and we can drill through there. Here you can see the down where the cross member meets and how I've drilled out a little bit of it just so that we can have a center point for our 9/16. So over on our driver's side, the setup is going to be a bolt, a flat washer. We're going to pass that through. Then we'll have another flat washer. We'll have a split lock washer, and then our nut. So both bolts that are going to go in on that side are going to be like that. Now on the passenger side, it's going to be slightly different. We'll have one just like that at the back side right here. And then up front, we're going to have this little washer right here, or spacer, I should say. That's going to slot into that hole. I'll probably have to play around with this fitment a little bit just to get that right. We'll flip it up. Nope. So it only goes that way. I'll probably have to slide this forward just a bit to get it to line up correctly. But after that, we're going to have another spacer. It's going to be this flat one here. We'll have the bolt go through that, and then on the other side, we're going to have another flat washer, a split lock washer, and then a nut. Now on those frame bracket bolts, we left those loose because we are going to have to play with this a little bit. I can already tell this side's lined up pretty well, but that side I need to kind of push back just slightly so I can have that drop right through. Now we can slot in our tube spacer since our hole's large enough, and that's going to sit there with that, allowing, since we only shot that 9/16 hole through the hat channel, and then now we have that 7/8 up here, that hat channel is going to hold this up. So we'll keep it nice and centered, and it's pretty flush with the bed. Then our next step is going to be actually mounting up our base rail. Now we're going to start with our cat head screws. That's these guys right here, and we're going to put a split lock washer on it, and that's going to be in the back corner spaces here. So we'll slide our rail back in place. We'll drop this down on both sides. And then in your kit, there's going to be the spacer block with a weld nut on it, and then a tool that you'll drop it right in. And we're going to go right through the hat channel from the side, and we'll use that tool to help hold that in place so that we can thread in our cap head screws. Next, we're going to grab 3 of our carriage bolts, that one longer one, and then 2 of our U-shaped spacers. And we're going to be placing these with the polypropylene side down in the center. So, push that in. And then in the front, facing towards the tailgate, we'll be using one of the shorter carriage bolts. On the side where we had that tube spacer, we're going to be using the longer one. Going towards our tailgate, that's going to be those other carriage bolts. With these all dropped in, now we can get under the vehicle and add on our other split lock washers and nuts. Now we're going to slide in one of our U-shaped spacers between our bracket and the bed, and that's going to help keep that nice and supported because there is a bit of a gap here. Might be a little bit of a challenge depending on how it's sitting on the rib of the bed. This side was a lot easier than the driver's side. It just slipped right in for me. I came in from the open side of the hat channel and just popped it right through. And then on the bracket side, we're going to have our offset spacer, so that flat guy right there. We'll pop him on. And then a flat washer, a split lock washer, and then we're going to have a nut. Now, if you're not getting enough threads, you might need to go up top and just kind of hammer down on the top of the carriage bolts. Get them to pop through. The powder coating that they do on the rails is usually pretty thick, so sometimes the square part of the carriage bolt head doesn't want to slip through it, and you got to persuade it in. But we're going to leave that just hand tight for right now because we are going to still have a little bit of maneuvering we need to do. And we're going to do the same thing for our center bolts as well. We'll do a flat offset spacer, a washer, a split lock washer, and then a nut on both this rear one and that other carriage bolt in the front. And make sure you are putting your tape up so that it's actually helping protect the bed. To install the cab side rail, we're now going to just have it kind of sit here, and we're going to use the base of our hitch to slot it in so that we know it's exactly where we need it to be. To make that process a little bit easier, I measured from the center of our slot and the top of the rail over to the center of the other one, and I want that to be about 22 inches because that's what it is for our feet. So now that it's set up, I can grab our hitch and drop it in. And then we can measure from this up to, or the edge of the rail up to the cab to make sure we're not crooked at all. Let me we're at 25. So along with that, I've also measured from the side of our bracket over to our wheel well so that I make sure that this is even on both sides. That way, when we take our hitch in and out, we don't have to worry about it having any issues or getting bound up trying to go into here. Now that we have our hitch centered in our base rail how we want it, we're going to use a punch and we're going to mark out our holes. So we'll be doing the 2 outer ones here, and then we'll only be doing the center one that's closest to the cab. We don't want to do the one that's facing towards the tailgate. That one is going to be left alone, so you don't need to drill a hole through there. So I'm going to mark them out with my punch. With our holes marked, we can pop our hitch back out and move the base rail out of the way so that we can drill. And same process, we're going to start out with that 1/8 inch bit, get a hole going, and then we'll just work our way up to 9/16. Now on both the passenger side and driver's side, we're going to have 2 of our U-shaped spacers, and we're going to be placing these on the frame bracket right here. Now if you have it a little too tight on the bolt that's running up to the rear here, I recommend loosening that up. So I'm going to get down to about 1 or 2 threads. So we have a little bit of wiggle room because the hatch channel is super close to this, and it's going to fight us the whole way through, or at least it did on the driver's side. So I'm going to slide this in from the far end here and push her over. I'm going to just reuse that tool that we used before that came with our kit, push it. We'll get that lined up. Our hole. This side actually went in super easy. The other side really was tight, so. Okay, and this one, slide in as well. And now we can lower the bed so that we can drop in our bolts. All right, now in the middle, we are going to be using one more spacer block, and that's going to be on the back side here where we drilled our hole. So we'll get that in place, drop in our carriage bolts. And when you drop these in, you can see the powder coating's too much. So like I said before with that front rail, I'm going to come in with a piece of wood and just hammer that down a little bit too. So with those 5 bolts we just placed into our cab side base rail, we're now going to slot on our offset spacer. We're going to have a flat washer, a lock washer, and then a nut for each one of those. So 2 on the sides and then 1 in the center. And when you're doing it, make sure that you are placing your tape side up. So now that we have all of our bolts in and it's all loosely tightened down, we are going to actually tighten them down, and we're going to start with our bolts that are all vertical, so all of the ones that are running through our base rails, and then after that we will switch over and do the ones for the frame brackets. So this is just going to take a lot of patience, trying to get into all these tight spots. You probably need some extensions. You might even need to use a swivel adapter depending on what you have going on. It looks like the spare tire will probably need to come down just so that you can get that forwardmost bolt in the center. But other than that, it doesn't look too terrible. For all of the vertical bolts going up into the base rails, you're going to be using a 3/4 inch socket. And then for our frame bracket ones, we're going to be using a 15/16 socket and box end wrench because you're going to need to hold the other side of it so that way it's not spinning as you start to tighten down on that nut. Now that I have them all kind of snugged down with my wrench, I can come back with the torque wrench and torque it down to the settings listed in the instructions. And then after this, we're going to move over to these frame ones and we'll tighten those down as well. So I've already got my side bolts going into the frame brackets torqued down, but make sure that when you were doing those top ones, you also hit the 2 hex bolt on that front rail because those are going into that hat channel with that weld nut spacer that we stuck in there previously. Well, I think that does it for today's look at and installation of B&W's custom frame rail mounting brackets here on our 2024 Ford F-250. Please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department. We'd be happy to help you out on your journey.